I'm Charles Bartlett from the University of Delaware. Let's move on to a specimen that looks like this. And I choose this specimen and this family because it is one that's frequently identified the family in error, and we might as well compare it directly with the family Flattidae. Okay, once again, starting out at couplet 1, hind tibia with a large movable apical spur. So I've positioned this deliberately so we can see the underside of the apex of the hind leg. And, you know, there's the tibiae, and if that spur were present, and it's not, you would see it right there. But I've also positioned it so we can see this is the first tarsomere, and the second is right in there. You'll see that there's a pair of spines on the second tarsomere, and there's a little kind of conical thing that is projecting from it. So this is the next couplet. So the spur is absent, and if we go on to the second couplet, the hind tarsomere with 2 apical spines versus the hind tarsomere, the second hind tarsomere with a row of apical spines, this one has a pair of spines as opposed to a row. So we're going to go in the same direction that we went with the family Flattidae. This brings us to the next couplet, couplet 3. Okay. So we'll look at this specimen that you have next. And starting at the first couplet asked whether the hind tibia has a large movable apical spur. So what we need to do is find the apex of the hind tibia. So where we're looking, it's right there. That's the hind tibia, that's the apex of it. And you can see very clearly that there is no large apical spur there. So with that, we're going to go to couplet 2. And couplet 2 is an important couplet. It asks whether the second hind tarsomere bears 2 spines on its apex, or the second hind tarsomere bears a row of segments, of spines. So I deliberately set it up like this. So here is the tibiae, here is the first tarsal segment, and there's the second tarsal segment. And you should be able to see that there is a pair of lateral spines. As well, there happens to be a kind of projection in between those spines. So if we go back to couplet 2, it says second hind tarsomere with 2 apical spines, 1 on each side. We do indeed have that. And with tarsomere apex truncate or conical. So this would be the condition where we have 2 apical spines and a conical apex to the second tarsomere. So that sends us to couplet 3. Couplet 3 asks about the clavus having numerous small pustule-like tubercles. So that was the condition that we saw in the previous specimen. So I'll set this specimen up this way. And so the clavus with numerous small pustule-like tubercles. So right here is the clavus. And if you are looking for those pustules, you will not find them. Front wings longer than the body. Well, that's certainly true. With submarginal costal vein and numerous parallel cross veins in the precostal region. So you would be looking along in here as well as along in here for a submarginal vein and numerous costal cross veins, and they are not here. They are absent. At rest, held almost parallel to the body, but that is true. So we don't have the claval pustules. We don't have the submarginal cells. So the second side of the couplet reads clavus without pustule-like tubercles and front wings without numerous costal cross veins. So that describes our specimen. So this is not a flatted. And we'll move on to couplet 4. Couplet 4 reads the front wings with a series of cross veins between the costal margin and the apex of the clavus setting off a distinct nodal line and a differentiated apical reticulate area versus not being present. And when you look at the wings of this specimen, there actually is no distinctive apical line at all. That would be in contrast to this specimen, which you do not have in front of you. But here you have kind of the basal part of the wing, right? And here there is this nodal line, and beyond that nodal line, the wing is a bit different, having denser wing reticulations. So that is what this couplet is asking about. Are those present in the specimen we were looking at previously? And the answer is no, they are not. So this particular specimen is a tropoducid. It happens to be Peltotropis rotulata, which is the only moderately common tropoducid. And clearly it doesn't look a thing like what we were just looking at. So we can discard that particular couplet and go back to looking at this guy. Not a tropoducid, so we move on. Front wings without differentiated apical portion. Move on to couplet number 5. Number 5 reads front wings broad, longer than body, held almost vertical at sides of body. We know all of those things happen to be true. Venation irregularly reticulate. So when you look at this wing venation all the way through, it forms a network of fine cells because there's all these little tiny irregular cross veins all the way through it. So this does, in fact, have wing venation that's irregularly reticulate. Hind tibia without spines except at apex. So this is important. So you need to look at the hind tibia, and I'm going to look at this other side. There's a glob of glue on the other leg, so I'm going to set it up to look at this one. So you're looking at the hind tibiae right here, and it's asking if the hind tibiae has lateral spines. Now it's not the apical spines, it's lateral spines on the hind tibiae. And you will find that they are not present. And that's important because that defines this. That combination of features defines this as an Acanaloniid. And if the absence of those spines tells you for sure that it's not an issid. And those would be more or less your choices at this point. And I show this specimen deliberately because people confuse flattids and Acanaloniids. But once you have seen what the key features are, you'll find that they're really not that similar. So this is an Acanaloniid. Now I'd like to show a couple of things very briefly right now before we move on to the next specimen. One of those things, I'm going to go back to showing you a flattid just for the moment. So here we are looking again at a flattid. Once again, tubercles up here, a row, a submarginal vein and row of cross veins here. But the other thing I'd like you to notice is that white dusting. That's wax. That's very characteristic of flattids to have a white dusting of wax on it. Acanaloniids will never have that. So that's one little side feature.